that the different looks for the armor sets actually match across the classes. What I mean by this is the exact same armor set on the wizard as it is on the barb, and on the barb you can see the icons matching the barb set, and on the wizard it matches the wizard set. So it's very nice because there's no disconnection between putting the armor on the character and what it actually ends up looking like on the character. That's another improvement we did over Diablo 2, and we sort of pushed the envelope a little bit further on Diablo 3. Another thing is that we're giving the players to do is customization, and we really feel like this is something that we're very proud of. Yeah. We want to give you guys as many choices as possible. In this particular case, you see the female wizard. On every armor set, you're going to have a slot that you can dye to a color that you prefer. The dyes you can pick up in the world, either craft or buy, or maybe loot drops. Now, the interesting thing about this too is that some dyes are more rare than others. So in this case, you probably could get like maybe a crimson red that is very hard to get, and dye your armor set that way, and it'll really sort of let you show off the thing you got going there. And that's also nice to play in co-op, or even if you're doing PvP. Last but not least, weapons progressions. And here you have a concept on the top. We're showing the one-handed axe going from very, very simple to a little bit more ornate and fantastical. And usually what we're really considering about this is on the bottom you see the 3D models that match those concepts. What's important to us at this stage is that all the way on the most simple axe, that it reads as a very simple axe. There's not a lot going on. And then as you progress further and further, it feels like you're really upgrading this axe. You're really getting more power and more bang for your buck. In between the choices, we're not so worried about progression necessarily. Mainly what we're worried about at that stage is to make sure that it feels interesting and varied, so that as you're leveling up throughout the game, you have a choice to sort of try out different things and see if they're fun and if they feel right, and even to see if they match your armor set maybe, or things like that. The other thing about these axes or the weapons in Diablo 3 is that we make sure they're themed, and we sort of have a penchant for trying to make sure that maybe they look a little bit more evil or maybe a little bit more nice, and really want to give you guys a lot of bang for your buck when it comes to that. And we do this for all the armor. Like I said, this is just the one-handed axe as an example. And that pretty much puts us to crafting with Jay. Thanks.
All right, so the sad truth for us designers is that when you work with a system that is completely random, like the Diablo loot system, sometimes it fails. So the question is, what does that mean? And for us, how does that make our lives difficult? Well, randomness is completely unpredictable. If you go through an entire dungeon and you do not get a single weapon drop, the loot system didn't fail. There's not something wrong with our random number generator. That's the system doing what it's supposed to do. Sometimes you don't get what you want. So the thing that we need as designers is something that we can rely on for the case where loot does fail. So for the original Diablo and Diablo 2, that was vendors. If you didn't get a good weapon or a good pair of boots, you could always go to a vendor and see what they had, and they would have something that is good enough, better than what you've gotten in the world, that can kind of fill in the gaps. We don't care if the player gets the really awesome loot, if they get a streak and jackpot, that's great. But if they don't get good loot at all, that actually can make the game overly difficult and not fun, especially early on. So the purpose of our crafting system is really artisans are vendors 2.0. We looked at them and felt like we could do a lot more with them, that we could have a lot more robust system than just filling in the gaps. So I'm going to introduce you to all of our artisans. This is the Mystic. So the Mystic crafts wands, staves, and other kinds of magic items. She can also enchant items, and she can identify items. So, and then our next one is the Blacksmith, which we've kind of shown before. He crafts armors and weaponry. Adds gem sockets. So basically, if you have an item that doesn't have the ability to put gems in it, he can actually add sockets to it so that you can. And repairs items. And now that you've seen kind of two of them, also it's good to point out that when we created these characters, we were really focused on making real people. You know, they're not. We tried to not make them generic. They're very distinct. They have strong personalities, and they have a lot of opinions about the world they're in, how they view, you know, Sanctuary, how they view you and your actions. So it's just one more example how, even in small ways, everything we touch, we try to permeate the game with story. So, and this is a great example. The jeweler, a greedy old man, he crafts rings and amulets, combines gems together, and can desocket gems. Basically, he can take an item that has gems in it, and for a small fee, he can pull the gems out of it. So, and that preserves the gems and the items. So you can always feel free to socket your gems in your items and use them. It was one of the things, we love the idea of kind of combining gems together and collecting them. That was really prominent with Diablo 2 gameplay, but we didn't like that it made you not want to use your gems. So we want you to use your gems, but we also want you to collect them and upgrade them. That's also why the jeweler can combine gems and make higher quality ones. So exactly how many gems? A lot. So there's 14 gem levels. This shows basically every gem that can drop in the game, but only the first 5 levels actually ever drop. So up to Radiant, every level past that can only be made by the jeweler. And he does that by combining those smaller gems together. So getting those extremely high-level gems is definitely achievement. Good luck.
Okay, now that Jay introduced you all to the artisans, we're going to talk a little bit about how we interact with them with the interface. Now, as an interface designer, as much as I would love to believe you guys are going to pick up Diablo 3 to gaze lovingly at the interface, I know that is not the case. You guys are there to kill stuff and to enjoy the action. And so the interface should never impede that. It should be quick to pick up, simple to use, so you guys can get about your business of killing things. So with the vendors, the main way we could achieve some simplicity was to maintain consistency. We have here the blacksmith interface, and you can see that it's broken up into 2 main areas. Down the left-hand side are the options, and this will be the same for all the vendors. Anywhere there is a consistent option that they can do, such as shopping or crafting, will always be in the same spot. We really didn't want you to have to learn a new interface just because the vendor offered up different options. On the right-hand side is the chosen option. So in this case, it's socketing for the blacksmith. Also on the right-hand side, you can see that we've added some flavor to the UI just to kind of reinforce what it is that that vendor does for you. In this case, the blacksmith, so we have tools of the trade. We have tongs, have a hammer, and the surface looks a bit like an anvil. And if you were to compare that then to the mystic, you can see that the options stay the same down the left-hand side, but the right-hand side, the flavor changes. It's just any way we can help infuse some personality, even in the interface, just to kind of remind you who these people are. Now, crafting is something that we're going into in a different angle this time with Diablo 3, and we're pretty excited about it. It's a new system, and with that comes a host of problems. And I'm going to kind of go through the process a little bit just to show you how we make the interface. So the first stage is an early mock-up. What you see here never made it in-game for any kind of testing, but it helps to sit down with design and go over stuff and make sure that it's hitting all the information points that they want to get across to the player. So you can see there's the listing, there's a picture of the item, next to it are all the material requirements.